Hi, welcome to another episode of the TeleWellness Hub podcast. I'm Raya Hamilton, your host. Today we're speaking with Dr. Ginger Raya. Dr. Ginger is an associate professor at UT Health School of Public Health in the Department of Management, Policy, and Community Health. She's experienced as a faculty, a course developer, and healthcare administrator for over 18 years. She's also a certified career coach specializing in helping grad students find meaningful careers in healthcare. Today, we're going to talk about self-care, community health, what it looks like to have an education in healthcare, careers in healthcare. She's also one of the co-founders of the Women's Educational Resource Entity, which focuses on providing women with information to grow their financial wealth through calculated risk and education. She serves on several boards. She was elected to the board of directors for Pioneers 21, ALPFA El Paso, and is the president-elect for the local chapter of the American College of Healthcare Executives. Welcome, Dr. Raya.
Thank you, Martha.
I'm very excited to talk to you. Before we hit record, I started saying I feel like there are just so many topics that we could dive into, just with your wealth of experience and knowledge. And to start with, I'm curious first and foremost, why do you do the wellness work that you do?
I defaulted to, I'm going to start by saying that I'm in healthcare first, right? And I would say that although I don't think that healthcare and wellness are the same, I would say that I fell into the wellness space through healthcare. And so I started my healthcare career about 18 years ago, and I would say that I personally fell into the wellness space when I had my first anxiety attack. And it was because I was doing too much because I thought I could handle everything. I thought I could do it all, right? I could be a mom. I could be on all these boards. I could go to school. I was doing too much. And my body decided to put me in check, and I had an anxiety attack. And I thought I was having a heart attack.
It's scary.
So I ended up in the ER, and, I was like, I'm having a heart attack. I think it was like 34, and the ER doc was like, no, you're having an anxiety attack. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm a champ. Check again. And I think after that, I really realized that we really do need to listen to our bodies, and that if you don't, your body will force you to listen to yourself. And I think at that point in healthcare, I really started to understand the concept of wellness. And I think throughout the healthcare journey, and I think that it's starting to change more, that we understand the value of what it is to keep people well and the benefits of keeping people well, and the shift from fee for service to population health and this whole wellness space. So I think I appreciate it more, and it's taken me personally and professionally time to get into wellness.
Thank you for sharing. I didn't know that background, but you're right in the sense that I think there is a differentiation. I think we don't always talk about that. I think I myself, just hearing your story, touched kind of back on some points in my own life. I'm also a mom, trying to do a lot, excited about a lot. And first went into healthcare, behavioral health, and then kind of transitioned into the wellness space with my own life experiences. And I think that happens with a lot of people. I'm wondering, and you mentioned, you're in healthcare first. What tell us a little bit about your background. I don't want to speak for you. You have 18 years of experience in healthcare. So share a little bit about your journey in healthcare.
I've been mostly a healthcare operator for the last 18 years. So I started in an academic medical institution, pretty much always doing healthcare operations. And it was only until last year that I went into teaching full time. Throughout those 18 years, I was also teaching for 13 of those years. So I was always teaching grad school, a little bit in public administration, and I've always really enjoyed teaching. Like I love working with students, just seeing that spark in them. And in those 13 years, I think the other reason that I became a career coach, which you mentioned earlier, was because when I was working with my healthcare students, a lot of times students think I'm going to get this great career by getting this degree. And although the degree helps, there's a lot of other work that you need to do. There's a lot of other heavy lifting that you need to do if you want to be a healthcare administrator. And I realized that I was doing them a disservice by not speaking to them about the other heavy lift that they needed to do. So I went ahead and became a certified career coach. And then I also tried to work that into my time with them. Like, what are you going to do an internship, or what, how else are you going to work that so that you can get your dream job in healthcare? And so that's a little bit about the healthcare role that I've had the last 18 years.
That's incredible. It sounds like you've had a really diverse background. And to me, it sounds a little, having gone through graduate school, granted my program, right, was different in counseling and health psychology, but it's pretty revolutionary to hear the idea of having someone with a background in career coaching talk to you about your career alongside the clinical and health aspects that you're learning, because just for listeners in the background, you don't really hear or learn about how to launch your career when you're in graduate school. Typically, you hear about direct client or patient care, protocols, research methods. So that is pretty revolutionary to me to hear you talk about that, and an amazing opportunity for students. Is that a trend that's happening now in higher education, or is that own kind of insight?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of professors, we care about the journey of the student, and I think anyone who's vested in the success of their student, wants to give them feedback to make sure that they're successful.
Yes.
So I don't think everybody's getting certified as a career coach, but I think everybody's doing their part to make sure that they're successful in their own way, depending on what their route is.
And you touched upon kind of looking at internship and looking at what your career might be afterwards. I'm curious if we can talk about a little bit about identity, self-care outside of your degree. What does that look like when looking at the whole person? You're talking about leading, teaching, guiding, mentoring students. How do you approach the whole person in that? What recommendations do you have for people who are in college, in graduate school, or are looking at how to navigate their career and taking into account the whole person?
For me personally, I would say that when I was leading large teams in healthcare operations, I think the term burnout comes to mind, right? We hear about physician burnout. We hear about, nursing burnout. You constantly hear this term burnout. And when I was leading large teams, there was one point where I had a team of 10 managers. I had a book of business of $68 million. I had 25 clinics that I was overseeing. There were times that I would walk into the room and I could feel it, right? That my team they were tired. They were exhausted. And that concept of self-care, where absolutely plays out. And as a leader, I think you have to read the room, and you have to make sure that they're okay. And I think it starts with you, right? And that whole anxiety attack thing, that it's like, what are you doing for them, and are you encouraging them to take care of themselves? Because I think the other thing about our culture is that people think, oh, I'm going to hustle. Like, and I would work with managers that would say, I don't feel well today, but I'm still going to come in because I know I have to get this done. And it's like, what are you doing? When you have a heart attack, what are you doing? Go take care of yourself, right? And so really encouraging that and saying, I would always say, you cannot take care. You can't fill somebody else's cup if yours is empty.
Yes.
And in the lectures and the teachings that I do right now, where we talk about the value of what we do versus the value of who we are and the value of self, that is something that is implemented in that curriculum, because you cannot take care of other people if you're not well, right? And I think especially for moms, for women, for, that we're taking care of everybody else, and we think, no, 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 I got to take care of my kids first. I got to take care of, like, I get it. But if you're not well, at some point that's going to catch up to you. So in that regard, in some ways, we have to be a little selfish and make sure that, do I have what I need to be okay? Because if I don't, I cannot take care of my family.
Right.
I cannot take care of my team. And in that healthcare operations setting, it was like, how can you take care of your physicians that you love? How can you take care of your nurses? How can you take care of, if you are not well, go home.
Yeah. I've talked about it on this podcast before and with other colleagues, this idea of kind of hustle culture, how it just creeps in a lot into our society. And I attach it a lot to our own identity. For those listening, what are some initial things that people can evaluate when it comes to, are they taking care of themselves? Just kind of preventative, or evaluating areas when it comes to self. What are some things people should examine and take a look at?
I find it alarming how many people just don't go in for like an annual checkup. Mm-hmm. When was the last time you went in and just had some lab work done? Like, just, or really took the afternoon off, or honored your weekends, or honored your evenings, but like, do those things, right? Honor your space, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure I'm guilty of like not honoring my space, but like, I love, go get your wellness check.
Yeah.
Go to your doctor, right? At a minimum, that should be normal. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no reason not to do those annual checkups.
I'm really glad that you give that reminder, because you're right. I think when time kind of escapes when you're doing too many things, and you mentioned as being a mom and doing all the things, especially as women, there is a lot of invisible load, and that load typically involves taking care of other people. So making sure other people get their wellness checks, other people have everything they need. Kind of, it's a nice reminder that you're providing us with your 18 years of experience and everything to put a mirror back onto ourselves and remind ourselves that it's normal to take care of ourselves, and at minimum, go get your annual wellness check. You brought up, I want to hear more about this, what you discussed in terms of this concept of self and looking at that. I know there's a whole curriculum, and we don't have time to dive into all the details, but if you can give us a little snapshot, a little glimpse, a sneak peek as to what that looks like.
Some of the work I've been asked to do is to kind of try to break that out, because I think that, again, part of our culture is that, when you meet somebody new, the go-to question is usually outside of what's your name. The first question we ask each other is like, what do you do? Right? We don't ask like, oh, do you have any pets? Like, we usually don't say that, right? We always say, what do you do? Right? Because that is so deeply ingrained in our in who we are, right? I'm a healthcare administrator. We don't even say like, oh, I'm a mom, right? I'm a wife. Right? We say I'm a healthcare administrator. I'm a professor. So that part of that course is that, we break out like, okay, we have to address that first, right? Who are we? Like, what is the value of what we do? And it's like, okay, this is the market value of what I do. Is this what I want to do? Is this, how would I look for work that I want to do? What is the value of that? And okay, let's put that on the shelf, right? This is what I want to do, or this is what I do, and this is the value of that. Let's put that away. But then there's this whole other concept of, what is the value of self, right? And so I usually talk about something called ideal self theory. And ideal self theory is 3 parts, and it's like mental, the hope, and then your true core. And in this true core, most of us know who we are, but then it's like, what is ideal self? And a lot of people struggle with that concept, because for some of us, we're so caught up in this fitness self. Like, I have to look a certain way, right? I have to be this weight. I have to be this, I can't have any wrinkles. I can't, right? And that's not what a mental image of yourself should be, right? What should a mental image of yourself be? Should you be, I want to be, I want to be happy. I want to be relaxed. I want to be able to enjoy my career. I want to be fulfilled. Like that should be a mental image, not I want to look like this or I want to be right. And so we kind of explore that, and then we talk about practical tips for how you can really take care of yourself. And I think the practical tips deal more with really showing yourself grace. Because the other thing about this is that I think when you talk to people and when you coach people, we're usually the hardest on ourselves. Right? Like we're always the ones that are like, well, I did this, or if I made a mistake, I'm always the one that's like, oh my god, I did this wrong, and this is my fault, right? And it's like, well, how would you speak to a friend versus how would and would you speak that, and do you speak that way to yourself? Because for most of us, we don't speak that way to ourselves. We speak kindly to the people we love, but we don't speak that way to ourselves. And that's a big problem. I think it's a big problem in wellness, and it's a big problem, like, do you speak that way to yourself versus to the people that you love? Because you should love you should be speaking like that to yourself. So that's kind of part of it.
I love that, because I'm sure once you start looking at that mental image of yourself and you start picturing that person, I'm picturing, maybe from my counseling background, a little bit of like inner child work, right? Where people will put a picture of themselves as a child and just speak to that child the way, just doing inner child work. It reminds me a little bit of that, but in the present moment, and really looking at your ideal self now. And I'm sure from there, say, for example, you mentioned wanting to be more relaxed, wanting to have peace. That'll determine your behaviors, how you spend your time, what actions you start investing in. I really love that idea and concept. So, what a great strategy tidbit to start looking at what is my mental image of self. I try to picture myself doing it as you were speaking. Yeah.
It's hard. When we talk about that, I'm like, okay, this is your homework because you're not going to get it done in 2 hours.
Yes. No, that's a great one. I wonder too, I'm picturing, how do you have time to become this ideal self? I'm picturing time is just so difficult, and I'm hearing the activities you are able to include in your day-to-day, just from your bio and knowing you personally. So we are both located in El Paso, Texas, and I am part of an amazing group where I have access to mentors, Pioneers 21, which that's how I met Dr. Raya on the board there. And I'm just kind of in awe, if I'm honest, and truly inspired. So this might be more of a selfish question for me, but I'm sure listeners could really gain from it too. How do you optimize your time? You talked about market value of self. I think there's a value very much so attached to our time too. So any recommendations you have for those who have struggles with that concept of, I don't have time to take care of myself?
I think what I've also had to learn the hard way is that it's okay to say no, right? So when people ask you to do something, even if, so to your point, I do a lot of board work. Well, I don't want to say it. I've narrowed it down to three. I have 3 boards that I'm on, that I think 3, maybe 4. And now when I get asked to do board work, even if it's a great cause and I love the cause, I have to look at the time that I have. And I have to, respect and honor that I love spending time with my family. I still have a young family. I still have a full-time job that I love also, and I love the board work that I have right now on my plate. So I think whenever I get approached to do anything else, I have to look at that time and say, I can't do that, and as a matter of fact, one of my friends reached out to me and said, Ginger, we should really do this. Come on, let's do it. And I'm like, girl, when? Like, how about when our kids graduate from high school? Let's do it in let's do this in 2026. So like I'm making pacts with people, like we'll do it in 2026 when we have time. Because I think you have to be able to say no and honor your time and to, and to really honor yourself and the people that you love and to say no sometimes.
Yeah. No, that's also an amazing reminder. And I'm sure when you do some work around that mental image of self, it'll really guide, like, what do I want to say no to? What will facilitate that person? And what will, sure. Like, that's an amazing core thing to look at.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about your background in various boards and wellness and healthcare. When this airs, I believe you have something coming up from the American College of Healthcare, right?
So I am on the board of directors for the local chapter of the American College of Healthcare Executives. It is the Southwest the Southwest Healthcare Executives Association. And this is a board that I'm very passionate about. So I encourage all of my healthcare students and even healthcare professionals to really consider joining a local chapter like this, because it helps to educate you about trends. B, it's a great networking opportunity, so you get to learn about other professionals in the area. And so we happen to have a very active, wonderful chapter here in El Paso, and we call it SHADE for short. And so we do have an event scheduled on the books for August the 24th. It's a Thursday, and that one should be a virtual event. And that one, the title of that one should be about behavioral health. So it should be about approaches to increase the value of organizations and meet community. And so we're really excited to post about that. So, I mean, if you're following me on LinkedIn, you'll see that.
Oh, awesome. And we can include a link to it in the show notes. Is it open to anybody who is currently in education within healthcare or interested or professional?
It'll be open to everybody. So we have a member rate, and then we'll have a different rate for non-members, but it's not usually an exorbitant cost. It's pretty reasonable.
Oh, that'd be wonderful, just to be able to kind of get a sneak peek into what that looks like and be able to network and learn the latest trends too, especially as I'm sure that healthcare has been evolving so rapidly and there were so many changes due to COVID. I feel like that could probably be its own episode, probably a separate one, but I will definitely make sure to include the link to that. And how can people connect with you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn for sure. I'm also on Instagram and on Facebook, and it's Dr. Ginger Raya usually.
Okay, wonderful. And my last question for you, Dr. Raya, before we sign off, for all of those who are currently working on establishing goals, maybe they're trying to figure out goals or maybe even actively working on reaching their goals. With your background in career coaching, 18 years in healthcare, and leading multiple clinics, I'm now knowing 25 clinics, a lot of goals that you have overseen, and also as a professor with graduate students. What recommendations do you have for them? What words of encouragement do you have for those who are actively working on creating goals or working towards their goals?
As far as reaching your goals, I think part of it is that you really think about what it is that you want out of this. What's the true value out of what it is that you want? Is it something, I don't want to say superficial, but like, are you doing this for the right reason, right? I think that's the first thing. If you're not doing it for the right reason, it's probably not a goal that you're going to achieve easily. You may not be able to last through the endurance piece of having to reach something that's hard to get. And the other thing I would say is that, have some grace with yourself. I think that if you don't achieve your goal easily, that's all right. It's okay. Just keep powering through. I have 4 degrees and they're all different. And part of that was that, I would try one thing and it was interesting to me. I liked it. And then I was just like, oh, maybe I want to do this, right? But I would still be able to use what I learned, use what I had, and then use that and apply it. and they were translatable skill sets. And I was always able to say, this is what I got from this. It's a translatable skill set. I'm going to apply it to this healthcare, industry. And I always was able to build on that and continue to grow. And for me, all the really good, powerful lessons were in the failures. They're not necessarily in the wins, right? They're in the failures. That's where you get all the really good lessons. So have some grace with yourself as you're trying to achieve your goals.
Dr. Raya, that's so inspirational. So find the value and grace in the failures, find the value in yourself. Don't forget to go get your annual wellness check. Yes. Your mental image of your ideal self too. Look at your ideal self and give yourself grace. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Dr. Raya, for being a part of our wellness journey.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.